After the previous podcast I did about why be happy in Doctor Strange, I saw that many people are actually interested in the topic of happiness. I think it's true, happiness is an eternal topic, one that almost everyone cares about. Everyone, at least once in their life, wonders what happiness is and how to be happy. So, what exactly is happiness that people keep searching for it? I believe very few truly know and understand it well enough to tell others what happiness is. Perhaps we must find happiness for ourselves to truly know its form, whether it's meant for us or for others. And perhaps there's no universal formula for finding happiness, because each person finds happiness in their own unique way, right? Before delving into anything, we must understand its definition. So first, I'll offer my personal definition of happiness. Of course, since it's personal, it won't resonate with everyone, so please forgive any inaccuracies. Generally speaking, I think there are two main definitions of happiness. One group views happiness as a journey without a known destination. We can only experience it and appreciate the process as we go. The other group sees happiness at the end of the road, believing that after every struggle, there will be light. Naturally, with two different definitions of happiness, people's approaches to finding it will also differ. From my personal perspective, those who see happiness as a destination will strive relentlessly to pursue everything they desire to achieve that ultimate result. In Western terms, this is often called living life to the fullest, meaning they will do whatever it takes at any cost to get what they want. They see it as a process they must conquer. A common mantra associated with this lifestyle, which I often hear, is, don't choose comfort when you're young, strive your hardest, and eventually you'll achieve success. Or, to put it simply, I think every parent used to tell us, study hard, get into a good university, and you'll have an easy, happy life, right? And once we get into university, people tell us, study hard, learn English, learn it, be an excellent student, then find a stable job after graduation, and that's happiness. Once we have a good job, people say, now go find a wife or husband to have a happy married life. And once we're married, they continue, now you need to have children, raise them well, to have a happy life. It becomes an endless process, a never-ending journey. Things always arise, just when we think we're close to the finish line, new paths emerge, and we never truly know when we'll grasp that happiness. So, from my personal viewpoint, perhaps this way of seeking happiness only ends when we die. Why? Because when we search for something in the future, and the future is always ongoing, continuous, the future and the present only intersect at one point, when we die and time stops. So, are we truly happy when we die? For those who focus solely on results and not the process, they strive in the present, hoping for a better future. But is it meaningful if, once we achieve what we desired in the future, it's not truly what we wanted, or it leads to other unforeseen complications? Is it meaningful if we achieve our desires in the future, but our present is filled with suffering and hardship? If we were to quantify this entire process, summing up all the metrics satisfaction, suffering, frustration, disappointment, pain, effort expended, and so on, would the final number truly represent happiness? Of course, everything comes at a price. I'm not saying this approach is right or wrong. I'm simply sharing my personal thoughts from my perspective. I want to clarify that trying your hardest and exhausting yourself are vastly different. Therefore, everyone should know their own limits. Some believe happiness is an endless journey, and they enjoy the process of seeking it. They cherish living in the present and embrace every moment, perhaps knowing that their time is uncertain. This lifestyle is called being present, living for the moment, appreciating every second, and finding happiness in the smallest things. We absolutely have the choice to find our own happiness. In Buddhism, there's also an aspect related to this definition of happiness, mindfulness. One way to practice mindfulness is through meditation. In Vietnamese, meditation is often translated as Thiền Định, but I feel that term doesn't fully encompass its meaning. However, for everyone's understanding, I'll use Thiền Định. What is meditation? In meditation, we deeply observe our mind and body, witnessing the constant arising and passing of all sensations and realizing the futility of chasing them. When we stop chasing, the mind becomes calm, clear, and content. All sensations, joy, anger, boredom, desire, arise and pass. But once we release our craving for these sensations, we can accept them as they are and live in the present instead of fantasizing about what the future might hold. So that's a brief overview of how meditation can help us live more fully in each moment. If anyone is interested, you can find a lot about meditation on YouTube, or there's a Netflix series on it. There's a quote in the book, "Your soul is medicine," which shares roots with meditation. Medicine heals the body, while meditation heals the soul. And I find that to be profoundly true. Meditation has truly changed me a lot. And since I'm already talking about Sapiens, a brief history of humankind, I'll share some interesting insights about happiness that I noted from the book. Firstly, just like other mental states, our happiness isn't determined by external factors like salary, social relationships, or political rights. Instead, it's determined by a complex system of nerves, neurons, synapses, and various biochemical compounds such as serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin. No one can achieve lasting happiness by winning the lottery, getting a new house, receiving a promotion, or even finding true love. They might only be happy for a moment. It's a bit sad, isn't it? I also read in Sapiens that each person's happiness regulatory system is entirely different. For example, on a scale of 1 to 10, some people are born with a joyful biochemical system that allows their mood to fluctuate between 6 and 10, stabilizing at 8 over time. Such a person would always feel happy, regardless of what happens in their life, even losing all their money or being diagnosed with diabetes. Conversely, others are cursed with a gloomier biochemical system. For instance, their mood might tend to fluctuate between 3 and 7, stabilizing at 5. Such a person would always feel bored, even if they won the lottery. They simply wouldn't experience any level of happiness beyond 7 because their brain wouldn't allow it. Hearing this, you might think something sounds wrong, right? Does finding a good job or a wonderful life partner really not make us happier? Well, it turns out that external factors can still influence happiness. For someone whose happiness scale ranges from 3 to 7, having a happy family or a dream job might consistently keep their mental state at level 7, helping them avoid negative experiences at level 3. So, they would still be much happier, wouldn't they? We absolutely have the choice to pursue happiness, but of course, this happiness operates within a framework and has limits. Not everyone can be happy in the same way. So never say things to anyone like, "You're sad over such a small thing," or "Just be positive, it's nothing." The level of resilience each person has is different, everyone. So finally, how do we find happiness? I believe this is what everyone listening to this podcast is wondering, right? This is the million-dollar question, because everyone in the world is searching for happiness and always desires it. As I said at the beginning, each person finds happiness in their own unique way, so there's no universal formula for it. Normally, when we search for something, we look either externally or internally, right? Let's start with searching for happiness externally, for example, finding someone to love, to depend on, to lean on. That's a happiness dependent on another person. People always change, and we ourselves change. So, if our happiness comes from another person, what happens when they change, when they can no longer bring us happiness? That would be painful, wouldn't it? If we've put so much effort into finding something, only to end up in a vicious cycle, getting nothing, and even losing something we once had, that's far more painful than having nothing at all, isn't it? Perhaps the external way of seeking happiness isn't truly viable. So, then there's only one way left: finding happiness from within. There's a wonderful quote by Marcus Aurelius: "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." He also implicitly said that we should judge everything by our inner sense of happiness. If you feel happy, everything is fine. If you don't feel happy, whatever you do feels wrong somewhere deep inside. We must feel happy and at peace with ourselves first. Someone who cannot be happy and joyful when alone, even with a companion, will only experience temporary happiness. Moreover, happiness that comes from within us can never be taken away because we haven't borrowed it from anyone. So, how do we find happiness from within? Each person has their own way. My way, as I mentioned earlier, is to practice meditation and live mindfully. So, my suggestion is that everyone can start finding their own happiness in their own way. I believe the journey of finding your deep inner happiness isn't a 1 or 2 day process. It's a very fascinating journey. Of course, there will be moments of pain and tears, but it's a truly interesting process, and I think we should learn and explore it for ourselves. Speaking of finding happiness, I remember about 25 years ago, I talked to my grandfather about happiness and finding it. I said to him, "Grandpa, I read a quote from a world-renowned billionaire who said, happiness is the absence of unhappiness. Is that true, Grandpa? My grandfather replied, Yes, my child. It's like affirmation and negation. There are only two states. First, if you want to be happy, you must define what happiness is, because many people cannot find happiness because they cannot envision where their happiness comes from, and they mislabel happiness. According to my grandfather, some people consider happiness to be wealth, fame, or carnal desires, but all of those things are not true happiness. My grandfather said something I'll never forget, and I've mentioned it in previous family-related videos. I hope you, my grandchild, will one day become successful, have status in society and wealth. Why? So you understand that those are not the ultimate goals of life. After almost a lifetime, he realized that sometimes happiness comes from the smallest things. And there are many things that in the moment you might find insignificant, but when they're gone, lost, or no longer yours, you realize how profound they truly were. So, I wanted to share a little from the perspective of my grandfather, who was about 75 years old then, sharing his views on happiness. I also know that happiness is not easy to find, and many people face great difficulties. I hope that no matter what struggles anyone faces, they won't choose to leave this world. Back when I used to hear news of people jumping from buildings, I'd often think, when that cold wind hits their face, will they regret it? But that was when I was young and foolish, everyone. Now that I'm older, have experienced life's hardships and understand what despair is, I understand better why they made that decision. In everyone's life, there will be times of difficulty, short or long. Some overcome them, some don't. But I hope everyone will try their best to endure and get through those hard times.